a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Bruce Lee. Lee Jun Fan, known professionally as Bruce Lee, was a Hong Kong and American actor, film director, martial artist, martial arts instructor, philosopher, and founder of the martial art Jeet Kune Do, one of the wushu, or kungfu styles. Lee was the son of Cantonese opera star Lee Hoi-chuen. He is widely considered by commentators, critics, media, and other martial artists to be one of the most influential martial artists of all time, and a pop culture icon of the 20th century. He is often credited with helping to change the way Asians were presented in American films. Lee was born in Chinatown, San Francisco, on November 27, 1940, to parents from Hong Kong, and was raised with his family in Kowloon, Hong Kong. He was introduced to the film industry by his father and appeared in several films as a child actor. Lee moved to the United States at the age of 18 to receive his higher education at the University of Washington in Seattle, and it was during this time that he began teaching martial arts. His Hong Kong and Hollywood-produced films elevated the traditional Hong Kong martial arts film to a new level of popularity and acclaim, sparking a surge of interest in Chinese martial arts in the West in the 1970s. The direction and tone of his films dramatically changed and influenced martial arts and martial arts films in the US, Hong Kong, and the rest of the world. He is noted for his roles in 5 feature-length films, Lo Weiss the Big Boss, and Fist of Fury. Golden Harvest's Way of the Dragon, directed and written by Lee. Golden Harvest and Warner Brothers' Enter the Dragon and the Game of Death, both directed by Robert Clouse. Lee became an iconic figure known throughout the world, particularly among the Chinese, based upon his portrayal of Chinese nationalism in his films, and among Asian Americans for defying stereotypes associated with the emasculated Asian male. He trained in the art of Wing Chun, and later combined his other influences from various sources into the spirit of his personal martial arts philosophy, which he dubbed Jeet Kune Do. Lee held dual nationality in Hong Kong and the US. He died in Kowloon, Tong on July 20, 1973, at the age of 32. Early life. Bruce Lee was born on November 27, 1940, at the Chinese Hospital, in San Francisco's Chinatown. According to the Chinese zodiac, Lee was born in both the hour and the year of the dragon, which according to tradition is a strong and fortuitous omen. Lee and his parents returned to Hong Kong when he was 3 months old. Bruce's father, Lee Hoi-chuen, was Han Chinese, and his mother, Grace Ho, was of Eurasian ancestry. Grace Ho was the adopted daughter of Ho Kom Tong and the half-niece of Sir Robert Ho Tung, both notable Hong Kong businessmen and philanthropists. Bruce was the fourth of 5 children: Phoebe Lee, Agnes Lee, Peter Lee, and Robert Lee. Grace's parentage remains unclear. Linda Lee, in her 1989 biography The Bruce Lee Story, suggests that Grace had a German father and was a Catholic. Bruce Thomas, in his influential 1994 biography Bruce Lee, Fighting Spirit, suggests that Grace had a Chinese mother and a German father. Lee's relative Eric Peter Ho, in his 2010 book Tracing My Children's Lineage, suggests that Grace was born in Shanghai to a Eurasian woman named Chung King-sin. Eric Peter Ho said that Grace Lee was the daughter of a mixed-race Shanghainese woman, and her father was Ho Kom Tong. Grace Lee said her mother was English and her father was Chinese. Fred Dudley Balling said Grace Lee was 3/4 Chinese and 1/4 British. However, in his 2018 biography, Bruce Lee, A Life, Matthew Polly identifies Bruce Lee's mother's grandfather as Moses Hartog Boschmann. Born to a Jewish family in Rotterdam, Boschmann became a successful businessman in Hong Kong, where he had a Chinese concubine named Zitai with whom he had 6 children, including Lee's grandfather Ho Kom Tong. Boschmann subsequently abandoned his family and immigrated to California. Ho Kom Tong, however, became a wealthy businessman with a wife, 13 concubines, and 30 children, one of whom was Grace Ho, Lee's mother. Names. Lee's Cantonese birth name was Lee Jun Fan. The name homophonically means, return again, and was given to Lee by his mother, who felt he would return to the United States once he came of age. Because of his mother's superstitious nature, she had originally named him Siphon, which is a feminine name meaning small phoenix. The English name, Bruce, is thought to have been given by the hospital attending physician, Dr. Mary Glover. Lee had 3 other Chinese names: Lee Yun Cham, a family/clan name; Lee Yuan Cam, which he used as a student name while he was attending La Salle College, and his Chinese screen name Lee Siu Lung. Lee's given name Jun Fan was originally written in Chinese as, however. The Jun Chinese character was identical to part of his grandfather's name, Lee Junbu. Hence, the Chinese character for Jun in Lee's name was changed to the homonym instead, to avoid naming taboo in Chinese tradition. Family. Lee's father, Lee Hoi-chuen, was one of the leading Cantonese opera and film actors at the time and was embarking on a year-long opera tour with his family on the eve of the Japanese invasion of Hong Kong. Lee Hoi-chuen had been touring the United States for many years and performing in numerous Chinese communities there. Although many of his peers decided to stay in the U.S., Lee Hoi-chuen returned to Hong Kong after Bruce's birth. Within months, Hong Kong was invaded and the Lees lived for 3 years and 8 months under Japanese occupation. After the war ended, Lee Hoi-chuen resumed his acting career and became a more popular actor during Hong Kong's rebuilding years. Lee's mother, Grace Ho, was from one of the wealthiest and most powerful clans in Hong Kong, the Ho Tungs. She was the half-niece of Sir Robert Ho Tung, the Eurasian patriarch of the clan. As such, the young Bruce Lee grew up in an affluent and privileged environment. Despite the advantage of his family's status, the neighborhood in which Lee grew up became overcrowded, dangerous, and full of gang rivalries due to an influx of refugees fleeing Communist China for Hong Kong, at that time a British Crown colony. After Lee was involved in several street fights, his parents decided that he needed to be trained in the martial arts. Lee's first introduction to martial arts was through his father, from whom he learned the fundamentals of Wu-style Tai Chi Chuan. Wing Chun. The largest influence on Lee's martial arts development was his study of Wing Chun. Lee began training in Wing Chun when he was 16 years old under the Wing Chun teacher Ip Man in 1957. After losing several fights with rival gang members, Yip's regular classes generally consisted of the forms practice, chi sao drills, wooden dummy techniques, and free sparring. There was no set pattern to the classes. Yip tried to keep his students from fighting in the street gangs of Hong Kong by encouraging them to fight in organized competitions. After a year into his Wing Chun training, most of Yip Man's other students refused to train with Lee when they learned of his mixed ancestry, as the Chinese were generally against teaching their martial arts techniques to non-Asians. Lee's sparring partner, Hawkins Chung, states, probably fewer than 6 people in the whole Wing Chun clan were personally taught, or even partly taught, by Yip Man. However, Lee showed a keen interest in Wing Chun, and continued to train privately with Ip Man and Wong Shun Liang in 1955. Wong Cam Liang, a student of Wong's, witnessed a sparring bout between Wong and Lee and noted the speed and precision with which Lee was able to deliver his kicks. Lee continued to train with Wong Shun Liang after returning to Hong Kong from America. Leaving Hong Kong. After attending Tak Sun School, Lee entered the primary school division of the Catholic La Salle College at the age of 12. In 1956, due to poor academic performance and possibly poor conduct, he was transferred to St. Francis Xavier's College, where he would be mentored by Brother Edward, a teacher and coach of the school boxing team. In 1958, Bruce won the Hong Kong Schools boxing tournament, knocking out the previous champion in the final. In the spring of 1959, Lee got into another street fight, and the police were called. Until his late teens, Lee's street fights became more frequent and included beating the son of a feared triad family. Eventually, Lee's father decided his son should leave Hong Kong to pursue a safer and healthier life in the United States. His parents confirmed the police's fear that this time Lee's opponent had an organized crime background and that there was the possibility that a contract was out for his life. In April 1959, Lee's parents decided to send him to the United States to stay with his older sister, Agnes Lee, who was already living with family friends in San Francisco. New life in America. At the age of 18, Lee returned to the United States. After living in San Francisco for several months, he moved to Seattle in 1959 to continue his high school education, where he also worked for Ruby Chow as a live-in waiter at her restaurant. Chow's husband was a co-worker and friend of Lee's father. Lee's older brother Peter Lee would also join him in Seattle for a short stay before moving on to Minnesota to attend college. In December 1960, Lee completed his high school education and received his diploma from Edison Technical School. In March 1961, Lee enrolled at the University of Washington and studied dramatic arts, philosophy, psychology, and various other subjects. Despite what Lee himself and many others have stated, Lee's official major was drama rather than philosophy, according to a 1999 article in the university's alumni publication. He soon met his future wife Linda Emery, a fellow student studying to become a teacher, whom he married in August 1964. Lee had 2 children with Linda Emery, Brandon Lee and Shannon Lee. Jun Fan Gung Fu. Lee began teaching martial arts in the United States in 1959. He called what he taught Jun Fan Gung Fu. It was basically his approach to Wing Chun. Lee taught friends he met in Seattle, starting with judo practitioner Jesse Glover, who continued to teach some of Lee's early techniques. Taiki Kimura became Lee's first assistant instructor and continued to teach his art and philosophy after Lee's death. Lee opened his first martial arts school, named the Lee Jun Fan Gung Fu Institute, in Seattle. Lee dropped out of college in the spring of 1964 and moved to Oakland to live with James Yim Lee. James Lee was 20 years senior to Bruce Lee and a well-known Chinese martial artist in the area. Together, they founded the second Jun Fan martial arts studio in Oakland. James Lee was also responsible for introducing Bruce Lee to Ed Parker, an American martial artist and organizer of the Long Beach International Karate Championships, where Bruce Lee was later discovered by Hollywood. Long Beach International Karate Championships. At the invitation of Ed Parker, Lee appeared in the 1964 Long Beach International Karate Championships and performed repetitions of 2-finger push-ups with feet at approximately shoulder-width apart. In the same Long Beach event he also performed the 1-inch punch. Lee stood upright, his right foot forward with knees bent slightly, in front of a standing, stationary partner. Lee's right arm was partly extended, and his right fist approximately 1 inch away from the partner's chest. Without retracting his right arm, Lee then forcibly delivered the punch to his partner while largely maintaining his posture, sending the partner backwards and falling into a chair said to be placed behind the partner to prevent injury, though his partner's momentum soon caused him to fall to the floor. His volunteer was Bob Baker of Stockton, California. "I told Bruce not to do this type of demonstration again," Baker recalled. "When he punched me that last time, I had to stay home from work because the pain in my chest was unbearable." It was at the 1964 championships that Lee first met Taekwondo master Chun Guri. The two developed a friendship, a relationship from which they benefited as martial artists. Ri taught Lee the side kick in detail, and Lee taught Ri the non-telegraphic punch. Lee appeared at the 1967 Long Beach International Karate Championships and performed various demonstrations, including the famous unstoppable punch against Husker World Karate champion Vic Moore. Lee allegedly told Moore that he was going to throw a straight punch to the face, and all he had to do was to try to block it. Lee took several steps back and asked if Moore was ready. When Moore nodded in affirmation, Lee glided towards him until he was within striking range. He then threw a straight punch directly at Moore's face, and stopped before impact. In 8 attempts, Moore failed to block any of the punches. However, Moore and Grandmaster Steve Mohammed claim that Lee had first told Moore that he was going to throw a straight punch to the body, which Moore blocked. Lee attempted another punch, and Moore blocked it as well. The third punch, which Lee threw to Moore's face, did not come nearly within striking distance. Moore claims that Lee never successfully struck Moore, but Moore was able to strike Lee after trying on his own. Moore further claims that Bruce Lee said he was the fastest American he's ever seen, and that Lee's media crew repeatedly played the one punch towards Moore's face that did not come within striking range, allegedly in an attempt to preserve Lee's superstar image. However, when viewing the video of the demonstration, it is clear that Muhammad and especially Moore were erroneous in their claims. Fight with Wong Jack Man. In Oakland's Chinatown in 1964, Lee had a controversial private match with Wong Jack Man, a direct student of Ma Kin Fung, known for his mastery of Xing Yikun, Northern Shaolin, and Tai Chi Chuan. According to Lee, the Chinese community issued an ultimatum to him to stop teaching non-Chinese people. When he refused to comply, he was challenged to a combat match with Wong. The arrangement was that if Lee lost, he would have to shut down his school, while if he won, he would be free to teach white people, or anyone else. Wong denied this, stating that he requested to fight Lee after Lee boasted during one of his demonstrations at a Chinatown theater that he could beat anyone in San Francisco, and that Wong himself did not discriminate against whites or other non-Chinese people. Lee commented that paper had all the names of the Sifu from Chinatown, but they don't scare me. Individuals known to have witnessed the match include Cadwell, James Lee, and William Chen, a teacher of Tai Chi Chuan. Wong and William Chen stated that the fight lasted an unusually long 20-25 minutes. Wong claims that although he had originally expected a serious but polite bout, Lee aggressively attacked him with intent to kill. When Wong presented the traditional handshake, Lee appeared to accept the greeting, but instead, Lee immediately thrust his hand as a spear aimed at Wong's eyes. Forced to defend his life, Wong nonetheless refrained from striking Lee with killing force when the opportunity presented itself, because it could have earned him a prison sentence. The fight ended due to Lee's unusually winded condition, as opposed to a decisive blow by either fighter. By contrast, according to Bruce Lee, Linda Lee Cadwell, and James Yim Lee, the fight lasted a mere 3 minutes with a decisive victory for Lee. In Cadwell's account, the fight ensued. It was a no-holds-barred fight. It took 3 minutes. Bruce got this guy down to the ground and said, "Do you give up?" And the man said he gave up. A couple of weeks after the bout, Lee gave an interview claiming that he had defeated an unnamed challenger, which Wong says was an obvious reference to him. In response, Wong published his own account of the fight in the Chinese Pacific Weekly, a Chinese-language newspaper in San Francisco, with an invitation to a public rematch if Lee was not satisfied with the account. Lee did not respond to the invitation despite his reputation for violently responding to every provocation, and there were no further public announcements by either, though Lee continued to teach white people. Jeet Kune Do. Jeet Kune Do originated in 1967. After filming one season of The Green Hornet, Lee found himself out of work and opened the Jun Fan Gung Fu Institute. The controversial match with Wong Jack Man influenced Lee's philosophy about martial arts. Lee concluded that the fight had lasted too long and that he had failed to live up to his potential using his Wing Chun techniques. He took the view that traditional martial arts techniques were too rigid and formalized to be practical in scenarios of chaotic street fighting. Lee decided to develop a system with an emphasis on practicality, flexibility, speed, and efficiency. He started to use different methods of training such as weight training for strength, running for endurance, stretching for flexibility, and many others which he constantly adapted, including fencing and basic boxing techniques. Lee emphasized what he called the style of no style. This consisted of getting rid of the formalized approach which Lee claimed was indicative of traditional styles. Lee felt that even the system he now called Jun Fan Gung Fu was too restrictive, and it eventually evolved into a philosophy in martial art he would come to call Jeet Kune Do, or the way of the intercepting fist. It is a term he would later regret, because Jeet Kune Do implied specific parameters that styles connote, whereas the idea of his martial art was to exist outside of parameters and limitations. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?